Welcome back to Married to a Korean Mafia Prince, Dead by Morning. In the first episode, we met Melissa Ada, a Nigerian medical student studying in Busan, South Korea, whose world collapsed when her father died and left behind a crushing debt of 237 million won. Cornered by debt collectors who threatened her family back in Nigeria, Melissa was offered a devil's bargain: marry Park Jin-woo, heir to one of Busan's most powerful families, for 1 year. The marriage would erase the debt. She would be free. She signed the contract. She walked down the aisle. She became Mrs. Park. But on their wedding night, just 8 hours after the ceremony, Melissa found Jin-woo dead in his bedroom, shot once through the chest. Security footage showed only one person entering and leaving his room during the time of death: Melissa herself. No one else. The evidence was damning. The family was convinced. Park Myung-ja, Jin-woo's formidable mother, made Melissa an offer she couldn't refuse: remarry into the family to preserve their honor or be treated as a murderer. The groom would be Park Tae-hyun, Jin-woo's older brother, a man who looked at Melissa like she was a threat that needed eliminating. Now, Melissa finds herself trapped in a new marriage to a man who believes she killed his brother, living under house arrest in a family compound full of secrets, with only one goal: prove her innocence before the Parks decide she's no longer useful alive. The second ceremony took place in a study that smelled like old leather and older secrets. No ballroom this time, no guests, no pretense of celebration. Just a room on the 3rd floor of the Park estate with dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a single window overlooking gardens that looked grayer than they had any right to be. 4 people. That's all it took to bind Melissa's life to another stranger. Manager Choi stood by the door like a sentinel carved from stone, hands folded, expression giving away nothing. The officiant was a thin man in his 60s who kept his eyes on the paperwork, never once looking at Melissa's face. He'd done this before. Probably married people who didn't want to be married. Signed documents that changed lives without changing his expression. Park Tae-hyun stood across from Melissa in a black suit, arms crossed, jaw so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. He hadn't said a word since entering. Hadn't looked at her. Just stared at a point somewhere past her left shoulder like she was a problem he was trying to solve through sheer force of will. Melissa wore black too. A simple dress Park Myung-ja had left in her room that morning with a note: wear this. Be ready at 9. No choice, no discussion. Just orders. The officiant cleared his throat. We'll begin. His voice was flat, bureaucratic. This wasn't a wedding. It was processing paperwork. Park Tae-hyun, do you consent to this marriage under the terms outlined in the contract? Yes. Tae-hyun's voice was cold, clipped, English, not Korean. He wanted her to understand every word. Park Melissa Ada, do you consent to this marriage under the terms outlined in the contract? Melissa's throat was dry. She swallowed. Yes. Sign here. The officiant slid papers across the desk. Marriage certificate. Contract addendums. Legal documents that would make her Mrs. Park for the second time in 4 days. Melissa picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake this time. She'd used up all her shaking yesterday, locked in that small room, waiting to find out if the family would kill her or keep her. She signed Park Melissa Ada. The name still looked wrong. Still felt like someone else's signature. Tae-hyun signed next. His pen moved with controlled violence, nearly tearing through the paper. When he set it down, the sound was sharp, final. It's done, the officiant said. He gathered the papers with the efficiency of someone who wanted to be anywhere else. You're legally married. No congratulations. No well wishes. He left quickly, Manager Choi following him out. The door closed. Melissa and Tae-hyun stood alone in the study. The silence was thick, suffocating. He finally looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something simmering beneath the surface. Rage, maybe, or grief, or both. Don't mistake this for mercy, he said quietly. Each word was precise, deliberate. You're alive because Mother wants answers. The moment we have them, this ends. He turned and walked out, leaving Melissa standing in the study, legally bound to a man who'd just promised her death. She stared at the closed door and thought, 365 days. But she didn't believe it anymore. Manager Choi escorted her to Tae-hyun's residence an hour later. Not the glass penthouse where Jin-woo had lived. Not modern and chrome and 42 floors up. This was different. They walked through the Park estate, a sprawling compound that felt more like a small village than a family home. Traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern security. Cameras on every corner. Guards at every gate. High walls that looked elegant but were really just prettier prisons. Taehyun's house sat at the eastern edge of the compound. A hanok. Traditional Korean design with curved tile roofs and wooden beams, but modernized. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Underfloor heating. Technology hidden behind traditional aesthetics. Manager Choi used a keycard to open the front door. Your belongings have been moved. Melissa stepped inside. The entryway opened into a large living space with minimalist furniture and art that probably cost more than her entire education. Everything was clean, precise, controlled, like Taehyun himself. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway. Short gray hair, stern face, wearing a simple black dress. She bowed slightly. "This is Mrs. Shin," Manager Choi said. "She manages the household. You'll follow her instructions." Mrs. Shin studied Melissa with the same expression someone might use while examining a stain on expensive fabric. "This way, Mrs. Park." She led Melissa down a hallway, past closed doors to a bedroom at the far end. The room was smaller than Jinwoo's master suite, but still larger than anywhere Melissa had ever lived. A queen bed with white linens, a desk by the window, a closet already filled with clothes that weren't hers. "Mr. Park's quarters are in the opposite wing," Mrs. Shin said. Her English was accented but clear. "You will not enter his private spaces without permission. Breakfast is at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 7 in the evening. You will eat in the dining room unless otherwise instructed." Melissa nodded, feeling like she was receiving prison rules. "There are restricted areas in this house and on the estate. Security will inform you if you wander somewhere you shouldn't be." Mrs. Shin's expression didn't change. "Do you have questions? Can I make phone calls? No. Internet access? No. When can I leave the estate? When Mr. Park or Mrs. Park Sr. decides you can." Mrs. Shin moved toward the door. "Security will escort you during daylight hours if you wish to walk the grounds. After 10 p.m. you should remain in your quarters, for your own safety." The last part sounded like a threat. Mrs. Shin left, closing the door behind her. Melissa stood in the center of her new room, her new cell, and tried to breathe normally. The walls felt closer than they were. The window showed gardens and walls and cameras. Beautiful, controlled. Trapped, she moved to the closet. Someone had unpacked her things, clothes hung neatly, shoes arranged on shelves. But mixed in were items that didn't belong to her. A man's watch on the dresser, a leather briefcase leaning against the wall. A tablet charging on the desk. Jinwoo's things, someone had moved them here. Maybe in a hurry, maybe intentionally. Melissa picked up the briefcase carefully. Expensive leather, combination lock. She tried the latches, unlocked. Inside were work documents, business cards, pens, nothing obviously important. She rifled through carefully, medical student habits making her methodical. At the bottom, tucked into a side pocket, she found a business card that made her pause. No name, no company. Just a phone number, printed in small black font. And in the corner, embossed in red foil, a small triangle. Melissa turned it over. The back was blank. She stared at it for a long moment, then slipped it between the pages of one of her medical textbooks. Evidence or leverage, or just another mystery in a house full of them. The first night in Taehyun's house, Melissa couldn't sleep. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds she didn't recognize. The house settled and creaked. Footsteps echoed somewhere distant. Voices murmured behind walls too thick to make out words. Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and moved to the window. The estate at night looked different. Security lights illuminated pathways between buildings. Guards walked in pairs, radios crackling. In the distance, she could see lights on in other structures. Offices, maybe. Meeting rooms. The Park family didn't sleep. They worked, even at 2 a.m. Melissa watched a black car pull up to a building on the far side of the estate. 3 men in suits got out, moved inside quickly. 10 minutes later, they emerged with briefcases, got back in the car, drove away. What kind of family business operated at 2 a.m.? She thought about her father. About the debt he'd left behind. About the men who'd come to her dormitory with their polite smiles and their threats. Your father borrowed from multiple sources. Had he borrowed from the Parks? Or from whatever the Parks were really involved in? A sound in the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps coming closer. They stopped outside her door. Melissa held her breath, heart hammering. The footsteps continued past, fading away. A door opened and closed somewhere else in the house. Taehyun maybe, coming home, or leaving, or just existing in the same space without acknowledging her presence. She moved away from the window and tried to sleep again. This time exhaustion won. Morning came too early. Mrs. Shin knocked at 6:30. "Breakfast in 30 minutes, Mrs. Park." Melissa showered quickly, dressed in clothes that felt wrong. Expensive brands she'd never owned. Sizes that fit perfectly because someone had clearly taken her measurements without asking. Control. Again. The Parks controlled everything, down to what hung in her closet. The dining room was formal. A long table that could seat 12, but held only 2 place settings. One at the head, one to the right. Taehyun was already there, reading something on his phone, wearing a gray suit that probably cost more than her semester's tuition. He didn't look up when she entered. Melissa sat in the indicated seat. A staff member appeared immediately, young woman, early 20s, silent, and placed a traditional Korean breakfast in front of her. Rice, soup, banchan side dishes. Too much food. They ate in silence. Melissa focused on her bowl, trying not to let the tension strangle her appetite. Taehyun's presence was oppressive even when he wasn't speaking. He radiated controlled hostility. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, Taehyun set down his chopsticks and looked at her for the first time since she'd entered. "You'll stay in the eastern wing of the house," he said. His tone was flat, businesslike. "Don't wander. Security reports your movements to me. If you need something, tell Mrs. Shin. Am I a prisoner? You're a suspect." He picked up his phone, checked something. "Cooperate, and this will be easier for everyone." "Cooperate with what?" "With staying alive." He stood, buttoned his jacket. "I have work, don't wait up." He left. Melissa sat alone at the long table, surrounded by food she couldn't eat, in a house that felt like a mausoleum. She spent the day exploring her boundaries. Mrs. Shin had said there were restricted areas. Melissa wanted to know where they were, wanted to map her prison. She walked through the house slowly, methodically. The eastern wing where her room was located. The main living areas, kitchen, dining room, sitting rooms with furniture that looked like no one ever sat on it. A library with books in Korean, English, Japanese. Medical texts caught her eye. Expensive editions, some rare. She pulled one out, flipped through it. Someone in this house valued medical knowledge. She moved down another hallway. More closed doors. She tried one, locked. Another, locked. A third opened into what looked like a gym. Exercise equipment, mats, weights, empty. At the end of the western corridor, she found stairs leading down. Melissa paused at the top, listening. No sounds from below, no lights. She descended carefully. The basement level was cooler, darker. The walls were concrete here. No wood paneling or decorative touches. Functional hidden. The corridor ended at a heavy door with a biometric scanner beside it. Fingerprint and retinal scan. Melissa stared at it. Whatever was behind that door required serious security. Lost? She spun around. Taehyun stood at the bottom of the stairs, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. How long had he been there? How had he moved so silently? "I was exploring," Melissa said, keeping her voice steady. "This area is restricted." Mrs. Shin didn't specify which areas. "Now you know." He moved past her, positioned himself between her and the locked door. "Go back upstairs." "What's down here?" "Nothing that concerns you. Everything in this house concerns me now." "I'm your wife." His laugh was sharp, humorless. "You're a contract. Don't confuse the two." He waited, clearly not moving until she did. Melissa climbed the stairs, but she filed away the information. Basement level, biometric security, something Taehyun didn't want her to see. 3 days passed in careful routine. Breakfast in silence. Taehyun leaving for work, or meetings, or whatever the Parks did during the day. Melissa alone in the house with Mrs. Shin, and silent staff members who cleaned and cooked and never made eye contact. She read medical textbooks, tried to study. Her final exams were in 6 weeks, assuming she survived that long. Assuming the Parks let her return to school. Assuming any of this had an end that didn't involve her disappearance. On the 4th night, insomnia won again. Melissa wandered to the library at midnight, found a medical journal, tried to read by lamplight. Voices drifted from somewhere else in the house. Male speaking Korean, too muffled to make out clearly. She set down the journal and moved toward the sound. The voices came from behind a partially open door. Taehyun's study, maybe. She crept closer, pressed herself against the wall, listened. Manager Choi's voice. The footage was clean when we reviewed it. Another voice, deeper, unfamiliar. Then someone got to it after. Question is who had access. Silence. Then Taehyun, cold and measured. Everyone in this family had access. That's the problem. Melissa's breath caught. They knew. They knew the footage might have been tampered with. Manager Choi again. Do you want me to investigate internally? Quietly, Taehyun said. I don't want Mother to know until we're certain. And the girl? Keep her close. If she's innocent, someone used her. If she's guilty, she'll make a mistake eventually. Footsteps approaching the door. Melissa moved quickly, silently, back down the hallway. She made it to the library, picked up the journal with shaking hands, forced herself to look absorbed when the study door opened and closed. No one came looking for her, but now she knew. Taehyun had doubts. The family had doubts. The footage, the evidence that condemned her, might have been edited. She just had to prove it before they decided she was too dangerous to keep alive. The formal dinner happened on the 5th night. Mrs. Shin informed Melissa at 4 p.m. You'll dress for dinner tonight. Mrs. Park Sr. will be joining us. Wear the navy dress in your closet. Be in the dining room at 7. Melissa's stomach tightened. Park Myong-ja, the matriarch, the woman who'd orchestrated this entire nightmare. At 7, Melissa entered the dining room in the navy dress that fit perfectly, because of course it did. The table was set for 5. Park Myong-ja sat at the head, wearing black, hair pulled back severely, expression carved from ice. To her right sat a man in his 60s, gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, lawyer written all over him. To her left, a younger man, late 20s, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. Taehyun sat beside the younger man, already looking exhausted. Melissa, Park Myong-ja said, not Mrs. Park. Not daughter. Just Melissa, sit. Melissa took the empty seat across from the young man. This is Mr. Kang, our family attorney, Park Myong-ja continued. And my nephew, Park Jin-seok. Jin-seok smiled weakly. He had Jinwoo's features, but softer, less defined. Like a photocopy that hadn't quite captured the original, Mr. Kang inclined his head slightly. Mrs. Park. Staff appeared with food, course after course of expensive dishes that Melissa couldn't identify. She picked at her plate, hyper-aware of everyone watching her. The conversation was carefully neutral. Business weather. Nothing about Jinwoo, nothing about murder. Then Mr. Kang set down his chopsticks and looked at Melissa. The preliminary findings confirmed death occurred at 11:47 p.m., he said. His tone was clinical, consistent with the security footage timestamp. Melissa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Park Myong-ja watched her. Taehyun watched her. Jin-seok looked down at his plate. The words came out before she could stop them. That's not consistent with the rigor mortis timeline. The room went silent. Every eye turned to her. Mr. Kang's smile was condescending. I don't believe you were present for the medical examination, Mrs. Park. Melissa set down her fork carefully. Her heart hammered, but her voice stayed level. I don't need to be. Rigor mortis begins within 2 to 4 hours of death, starting with the facial muscles and moving to the extremities. In the crime scene photos, she looked directly at Taehyun. Jinwoo's jaw and fingers showed advanced rigor. That suggests death occurred earlier, possibly as early as 11:15 or 11:20. The silence was absolute. Taehyun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. You saw the crime scene photos? His voice was soft, dangerous. They were on your desk. The door was open. Mr. Kang started to speak, but Park Myong-ja raised one hand, silencing him. Melissa is studying to be a doctor, she said smoothly. Of course she would notice such things. She smiled, thin, sharp. How fortunate for us to have someone with medical expertise in the family now. She changed the subject with the efficiency of someone redirecting traffic. But the damage was done. Everyone was looking at Melissa differently now. Mr. Kang with barely concealed irritation, Jin-seok with something like fear, Taehyun with calculation, and Park Myong-ja with satisfaction. The dinner ended an hour later. Melissa excused herself, returned to her room, closed the door, and leaned against it. Her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was fading, leaving her hollow. She'd just challenged the official timeline. In front of the family lawyer, in front of Park Myong-ja. Either she'd just helped herself, or she'd just signed her own death warrant. Footsteps in the hallway woke her at midnight. No, not woke her. She hadn't been sleeping. Just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner over and over. The footsteps stopped outside her door. A knock, sharp, impatient. Melissa sat up, heart racing. Yes? The door opened. Taehyun stood in the threshold, still wearing his dinner clothes minus the jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, tie loosened. He looked dangerous. "Who told you about the autopsy results?" Melissa stood, faced him. "No one. I could tell from the wound pattern." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The space suddenly felt much smaller. "You're either very smart," he said quietly, moving closer, "or very involved." She didn't step back, didn't flinch, maybe both. He stopped inches away, studying her face like he was trying to read a language he didn't quite understand. "The door to my office," he said. "It wasn't accidentally left open. I know. You were supposed to see those photos. I know that too." A long pause. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. "My mother thinks you're innocent," Taehyun said finally. "I think you're dangerous. I think I'm trying not to die in a house full of people who want me dead." Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile, not quite approval. Just acknowledgement. "We'll see who's right," he said. He turned to leave, paused at the door. "Stay out of restricted areas, Mrs. Park. Next time I find you somewhere you shouldn't be, I won't be as understanding." He left. Melissa sat on the edge of her bed, pulse racing, and realized something. That wasn't just a warning. It was a test, and she'd passed. 2 nights later, Taehyun sat alone in his private office, reviewing security footage for the 100th time. The hallway outside Jinwoo's room, timestamp running in the corner, 2340 empty corridor. Brightness still empty. 2342 Melissa enters frame, approaches Jinwoo's door. He paused the video, studied her posture, her movement. She looked uncertain, not like someone about to commit murder. But appearances meant nothing. He'd learned that years ago. He let the video play, 234215. She enters the room, 2342 16, 2342 17, 2344 02. Taehyun's finger hit pause. He rewound. Watched again. 4217, 2344 02. The timestamp jumped, almost 2 minutes missing. He checked the metadata. File last modified, 01:33 a.m. on the night of Jinwoo's death. Hours after the murder, someone had edited this footage. Taehyun sat back, mind racing. He picked up his phone, dialed a number he kept off the books. "Yes, sir?" The voice was young, male, efficient. "I need the raw server logs from the night of the 15th. Every access point, every user ID, every modification made to security files between midnight and 3 a.m. That's going to include family members." "I know what it includes. I also know you're discreet." Taehyun's voice hardened. "Get it done. Tonight." He ended the call. Stared at the frozen image of Melissa on his screen. Either she was the most elaborate plant he'd ever seen, or someone had used her as the perfect scapegoat. And if it was the latter, that meant someone in this family was a killer. Someone close enough to access the security system. Smart enough to edit footage. Ruthless enough to frame an innocent woman. Taehyun thought about his brother. About Jinwoo's secrets, his deals, his enemies. About the business their family conducted in basements and back rooms and boardrooms that never saw daylight. Jinwoo had been involved in something that got him killed. And now Taehyun had married the only witness. He pulled up another file. Started making a list. Melissa couldn't sleep again. 3 a.m. The house was quieter now, but not silent. Never silent. The Parks didn't sleep like normal people. She got up, pulled on a sweater, moved to the window, and saw lights, not in the main house, in one of the outbuildings across the garden. The storage wing, a flashlight beam moving inside. Melissa's breath caught. Someone was in there. Someone who wasn't supposed to be. She should stay in her room. Should mind her own business, should not get involved. But if someone was breaking into the park compound, maybe they knew something about Jinwoo's death. Maybe they had evidence. Maybe they could help her prove her innocence. Melissa made a decision she'd probably regret. She slipped out of her room, moved through the house silently. Medical school had taught her to move quietly through hospital corridors at night. Same principle. Out the side door, across the garden, staying in the shadows. The storage building was separate from the main house. 2 stories. Traditional exterior hiding what was probably modern security inside. The door was propped open. Melissa approached carefully, listening. Movement inside. Rustling, someone searching. She peered through the gap. A figure in black, face covered with a mask, moved through stacks of boxes with systematic precision. They had a flashlight, were opening boxes methodically, checking contents, moving on. Not random theft, they were looking for something specific. The figure found a box marked Park Jinwoo, personal effects in neat hangle. Melissa's heart hammered. They opened it, pulled out a laptop, pocketed something small, too quick for Melissa to see what. Then an alarm blared. Motion sensor triggered. The figure spun, saw the flashing lights, ran. Not toward Melissa. Different direction. They'd planned an escape route. Voices shouted. Security flooding in from multiple directions. Melissa pressed herself against the wall, hidden in shadow, as guards rushed past. The figure disappeared into the darkness beyond the compound walls. Too fast, too professional. Gone. Melissa waited until the security had spread out, searching the perimeter, before moving toward the opened box. She had seconds, maybe less. The box lay open, contents scattered. Jinwoo's things, personal effects, a watch, some books, papers, and on the floor, dropped in the intruder's haste, a bullet casing, brass. 9mm. Melissa picked it up, hands shaking. It was identical to what would have killed Jinwoo. She knew that even without ballistics training. Same caliber, same make. She turned it over, on the base, stamped in red, a small triangle. The same symbol from the business card in Jinwoo's briefcase. Footsteps approaching. Melissa shoved the casing in her pocket and ran. She made it back to her room just as security swept through the main house. Stood with her back against the door, breathing hard, feeling the weight of the casing in her pocket. Someone had broken in, someone professional, someone looking specifically for Jinwoo's things, and they'd either dropped the casing by accident or planted it deliberately. Either way, it was evidence, real evidence, connected to the symbol she'd found on Jinwoo's business card. Melissa moved to her desk, pulled out her medical textbook, retrieved the card. Held it next to the casing under her lamp. Same red triangle, exact match. What did it mean? What had Jinwoo been involved in? She hid both items in a hollowed-out medical textbook, old student trick, and tried to calm her racing pulse. Outside, security lights swept the gardens. Voices shouted in Korean. The entire compound was on alert. Melissa changed clothes, wiped dirt off her shoes, got into bed, and lay there, eyes open, counting her heartbeats, wondering what she'd just stumbled into. Morning came gray and tense. At breakfast, Tae-hyun looked up from his phone when she entered. "Did you hear the alarm last night?" Melissa sat down, kept her voice neutral. Hard not to hear it. Someone broke into the storage wing. He watched her carefully. Security is reviewing footage. Did they take anything? We're determining that. His eyes tracked her face, looking for tells. Melissa met his gaze. That's concerning. I thought this compound was secure. So did I. Park Myungja swept in, interrupting whatever Tae-hyun was about to say next. Tae-hyun, a word. Now. He stood, followed her out. Melissa ate alone, aware that Mrs. Shin was watching her from the kitchen doorway. The housekeeper approached with tea, poured carefully, then leaned close, voice barely a whisper. You should be careful, Mrs. Park. This house has eyes everywhere. Melissa looked up sharply. Is that a warning or a threat? Mrs. Shin's expression didn't change. Both. She walked away, leaving Melissa with cold tea and colder dread. That evening, Melissa was in her room when her door flew open. No knock, no warning. Tae-hyun stood in the threshold, face dark and controlled fear. Security footage from last night, he said, voice deadly quiet. You were seen near the storage wing. Melissa's blood turned to ice. I couldn't sleep, I was walking. You were watching someone break in and didn't report it. I didn't know what I was seeing until it was too late. He stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. The sound was final, threatening. You're playing a dangerous game. I'm not playing anything. Melissa stood, faced him. I'm trying to survive in a house where someone killed your brother and framed me for it. And now someone else is breaking in looking for something, which means either I'm not the threat, or you're part of something bigger. He moved closer. What did you see last night? She hesitated. This was it. The moment where she either trusted him or kept lying. Someone searching Jinwoo's personal effects. They took something. I don't know what. And you didn't think to report this? To who? Her voice rose. The family that thinks I'm a murderer? The security team that reports to your mother? I'm trapped here, Tae-hyun. Everyone wants me dead. Why would I trust any of you? Silence. He studied her with those unreadable eyes. The footage was tampered with, he said finally. Melissa's breath caught. What? Someone with high-level access edited it after Jinwoo's death. There's a 2-minute gap. He pulled out his phone, showed her the timestamp jump. Someone wanted you to look guilty. She stared at the screen, at the proof that she'd been right. You believe me. I believe someone wanted you to look guilty. That doesn't mean you're not. But his tone had shifted. Less accusation, more calculation. I have questions. So do I. Then maybe, Tae-hyun said slowly, we help each other find answers. Before Melissa could respond, he stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. What's in your pocket, Mrs. Park? Her hand moved instinctively to where the casing was hidden. His eyes tracked the movement. What is in your pocket? The air between them crackled with tension, threat, and the weight of secrets that could kill them both. Melissa's decision in the next few seconds would determine whether she lived or died.